Guys, welcome back to the Fairway Performance Podcast. Today we are joined by Will Shaw. Will is a guy who I met over at the PGA show in Orlando earlier this year, so only a few weeks ago. But we were both sitting at the media booth and he struck up a conversation with me because I was doing a lot of client check-ins at the time. Will is actually a really interesting guy. We had a great chat there, and he is the founder of Golf Insider and BreakX Golf. Will, did you want to say a quick hi to the audience and just give us a little intro about yourself and where you've come in the golfing world, or where you've come from?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sean. Yeah, it was actually listening to you giving, I think, advice on a deadlift, which harked me back to the old biomechanics days as you were helping one of your students. So yeah, my
Yeah.
background, I started as a golf pro, saw how good I could get and turned pro, but obviously wasn't that successful. Really got interested in coaching and trying to understand how we control movement, how we learn. So I ended up at university for 10 years, doing a master's, then lecturing, working with some athletes, doing a PhD, more on clinical stuff. And through that whole journey, it's really been trying to sort of relate how we can improve golf performance with optimizing practice, and dabbled with a bit of biomechanics as well on the side.
Yeah, cool. And so how many years ago was it that you were a pro? I'm not trying to, get to how old you are. I'm just talking how
No.
many years ago that was and what sort of era that was in golf.
Yeah, so still technically a pro based on being a PGA coach.
Yeah.
The last professional event I played I was 26, so 12 years ago since I last competed. I think I did all right. I think I finished like second. It was just like a local pro event, but it went away from uni, missed a couple of classes, and then came back and said I finished second, and everyone in my class thought I was sort of unreal. But then just a lot of injuries, and then I love coaching. I love trying to build businesses. I love trying to sort of learn and be a scientist. Yeah, I'm not competent enough. I like to think if I play well, I can break par. If I play badly, I'll still shoot 80. So that's kind of my standard.
Yeah, that sounds about like me at the moment. Yesterday was definitely around in the 80s. The wind was up about 30 miles an hour, so it didn't help. But mate, so with such a diverse background, how do you think your experience in biomechanics and motor control has influenced your approach to golf coaching and what you do now?
Yeah, I think interestingly, it's made it hopefully simpler rather than more complicated. So I think that the great thing about science is you can kind of drill down to like, what's this about? And the key metric in golf is actually just shooting lower scores. Whether you're a 20 handicapper and you want to get down to a 10 handicap, whether you're a 10 want to get down to scratch, or actually if you want to perform on one of the mini tours, stroke average is like the critical measure. So
Yeah.
we really focus on that and then work backwards from there. So then it's, well, what's the next step that's made up of your performance in like driving, approach, short game, putting, and then you can start to drill down deeper. So hopefully my approach is quite simple, and we can get really nerdy if there's a specific issue we need to unpick. But for me, it's
Yeah.
just what's the quickest journey to shoot lower scores for golfers.
Yeah, cool. So let's dive a little bit into that because obviously you've alluded to it. So let's say there's a golfer comes to you there between a 5 to 10 handicap. What data points are you looking at? Obviously, stroke average, we can see that by their handicap. What data points are you getting them to bring to you, and then how do you start to drill down into those in order to build out practice plans and get them shooting lower scores in the end?
Yeah, so the key thing is just having some playing stats. That tells us like how they can construct their scores. It doesn't have to be strokes gained data. People have heard about that. That is quite useful when I think you get below 10 handicap. But even if it's just fairways hit, greens hit, putts, up and downs, because that tells us how they're building that score. And then based off that data, we can start to benchmark them and go, okay, well, it looks like your driving distance or accuracy is the issue. We can see putts is an area which actually we need to focus on. So I actually did a study with, I think it was about 248 golfers I was trying to track across 12 months. This was off my own website and off Reddit. So it wasn't perfect
Wow.
science, but I collected all this data around, how much they played, how much they practiced, how much their handicap changed. And the really surprising result was the biggest variable in who improved the most was whether they kept regular playing stats.
Oh, wow.
When you look at the difference of people that kept playing stats versus didn't, there was a 2-shot improvement from those that kept playing stats. And importantly, those two groups played and practiced the same amount. So
Yeah.
start off with, that sounds weird, but when you think about it, we as golfers just a very bad understanding why we're scoring the way we are, and playing stats are really the answer for that.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes back to the old quote, what gets measured gets managed, right?
Spot on.
If you're taking stock of where your inefficiencies lie, or your character traits lie, or your bad character traits on the course lie, then obviously it's something that you can address Yeah, if you don't know, you don't know. The other thing that TPI also talk about, and this is from a movement and gym side of things, is we need to assess and not guess what to work on. From a gym sense, if we're just like guessing what we need to work on, like, I sit down, I'm tired, blah, blah, blah. It's like, cool, well, you're probably going to be working on things that may or may not help you improve. Whereas if we were to get a screening, or in this sense that you're talking about now, if we actually have data that supports what's leaking our scores and shots, then obviously it's something that we can build a plan and practice around.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think just on that point, we'll have so many parallels between gym training and golf training through this episode. But it's that benchmark as well. I think, same in gym is if you benchmark someone, they do something and they get better. Well, guess what?
mm,
Your confidence goes up, your motivation goes up, and it keeps on going. So I feel playing stats are like that benchmarking for golfers.
yeah, 100%. So obviously, being a coach is one thing, but then you've gone away and built, Golf Insider and BreakX Golf. What led you to, the inception of those things, and how did that sort of start, and what is it now?
Yeah, so Golf Insider was 2008. I stopped lecturing in sports science. I was starting a PhD looking at aging and motor control, and I just still wanted to write geeky golf stuff. So I wrote 5 articles, I think, and put them on Reddit. And I think the third one had like 6,000 reads in a day. And I suddenly thought, oh, I should build a website. And so that sort of, I spent a week up trying to learn how to build WordPress sites and hosting and all of that fun. But that started as just like an avenue to try and talk about golf performance. It ended up trying to work out, how do I make this into a business so I can like help more golfers and build more cool stuff. So it's ended up now sort of a mix of golf performance and practice stuff. There's some equipment review stuff, which again we try and do a good job on. That really helps us pay the bills to then do some more interesting stuff. So that was Golf Insider, and that's still
Yeah.
going today. I think at its height, we had like 2.5 million golfers read it in a year, a couple of years ago. So it got reasonably
Uh,
big. It's died down a bit. And then BreakX Golf is really a bit of software. It's an app that I built with Adam, who's an awesome developer and deep thinker as well. And that's really the basis of the work that I've done for about 10, 11 years with pros and amateurs. So I spend a lot of time looking at their stats and building a practice plan. It used to take me like 2 hours probably to build one practice plan, and even at the end of it looked awful. It was on PowerPoint, it sucked, I hated doing it. So the idea of BreakX Golf is it automates it from the end of you put in playing stats and it builds your personalized practice plan, but then it allows us to gamify things and track things and make practice more fun. So yeah, that's BreakX Golf. We're coming up to 2 years in. We've only got a small amount of users, but we're getting some really cool feedback and seeing some good results.
yeah, nice. Well, I might have to contribute and become a user of that, because it's probably something I need to work
Hey,
on.
you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, somewhere to like just house that, because I think a lot of people have an issue with, just like you're saying, like having, practice plans delivered in
Head sheet.
PDFs and things
No.
like this. So yeah, putting it into somewhere which is actually, just one place where you can have all that data, and then obviously going back and having games and ideas that, support improving those specific areas. Yeah, I can see that being highly beneficial. So the next thing I want to know about, what are some of the challenges you've faced with Golf Insider? Because obviously you were just saying there, like at the height of at the height of it, there's 2.5 million people. Is it now, people just aren't reading websites anymore and they're going elsewhere? Or is it like, for what reason is it that Golf Insider's seen that little bit of a dip in people jumping on there?
Yes, I mean, when I was running, I had a couple of awesome pros who helped me sort of build content, test stuff. And I was head of golf at Exeter University. So I was super busy. I was doing like 50, 60 hours a week on that, which was a great job. And running this on the side. But essentially, we're really reliant on Google. The way we're building content is what are people searching for. Let's try and create a really good bit of content around that, and go and Google, without boring people outside of the SEO world, Google came up with the helpful content update and just destroyed tens of thousands of small businesses. I think
Yeah.
that their idea was to get rid of AI, but essentially if you weren't like a big brand like say Golf Monthly or like Golf Digest, you just got hammered. So yeah, sadly we lost 90% traffic in 2 updates and 90% revenue. So it was awful for
Yeah.
us and that, but it was really, it wasn't a robust business model. So we're reliant on Google bringing traffic. It's like building all of your thing on Instagram or Facebook. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're learning, and now we're trying to build that back in a more robust way. It still is alive. We still try and do some really cool stuff on there. Just built a free strokes gain tool for everyone because I just thought that that's things that all golfers should have for free. So it doesn't have a
Yeah.
back end, you can't store data, but anyone can go on and put in a round of golf for 4 or 5 holes and work out their strokes gain data for like, tee shots and other aspects. So
Yeah,
that's sort of
nice.
where we are with that. It's okay. I don't think the world's going to go back to how it was before AI. So, I'm just going to keep moving Golf Insider along in a direction that hopefully is useful for golfers and hopefully works.
Yeah, I thought it might have coincided with sort of just after COVID and the rise of YouTube golf. People are moving away from potentially reading stuff, and we're a bit
There's that too. Yeah, definitely.
stupider and want to sit in front of something and watch it rather than having to actively digest it and read it and whatnot. So yeah, if you're not already, go and have a look. There's actually some really good articles. I had a look the other day before we had this chat, so I can definitely see there's some more things. I didn't realize the strokes gain tool was there either, so I might have to jump on there and plug in my last couple of rounds because yeah, they've been absolutely horrible.
Yeah,
I
well,
know
yeah,
where some of the shots have gone. They've gone into the water. That's where my strokes have
so
been
did I.
lost. Yeah,
Wow,
4 balls yesterday.
you poor man.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit of practical advice for listeners. So when we talk about so with BreakX Golf, we're talking about optimized and gamified practice sessions. What are the components of an optimized practice session for a high to mid handicapper who has limited time to dedicate to practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think great place to start. If someone's short of time, no matter if they're high handicap or low handicap, the first thing you want to do is just practice the core shots that you need in golf. So you need to spend a little bit of time getting the ball in play off the tee. So if you go to the range, it's a little bit of work with driving and mocking up some sort of little fairway and having a little game where you try and hit the fairway. And then thinking, well, what are the shots you tend to hit into the green most? So for some players, imagine yourself, Shaun, I met you in person. I imagine you knock the ball down there a good distance. It's probably more short irons and wedges. But for other people,
Potentially.
it may be a lot of fairway woods, as well. So it's practicing those and then just a little bit of putting and chipping. So I think if you've only got like an hour a week, it's just trying to cover the core aspects of golf. As soon as you have more than an hour a week, that's where you can start to then get a bit more interesting. So I think if you've got sort of say up to 2 hours a week, you then want to go, well, what's my biggest weakness? What's the thing holding back my scores? So is it driving? Is it putting? Is it short game? And then just do a little bit of work on your technique on there. So hopefully you've got a golf coach to go, well, I'm working on strike or face control or distance. And then play a skills game, play one simple skills game in that area as well. And the whole point of that is the technique. Golf is a deterministic game. You still need to work on your technique. But the skills game then allows you to problem solve and just get the ball closer to the hole and find a way to do that. And that gives you a score that then when you come next week and the week after, you can say, okay, I scored a 9. Next week, you may still be a 9, but then you'll start to have a 12, and then you go back down to a 10, then you have a 16, and that allows you to see your progress over time. And really, that's the journey. It's, well, can you do it in an environment with technique? Can you do it in like a skill-based environment? Can you then take it on the golf course? And so that's the way I'd look at that for someone who's short of time.
Yeah, nice. I love it. And then, so obviously, advice for lower handicappers. Obviously, as handicap comes down, it means that there's probably less flaws or deficiencies in your game. Maybe if you ask a lower handicapper, they will probably tell you they still have a laundry list of them. I probably would as well.
I still
But
suck.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think your standards just get much loftier because you've seen probably a few more good shots. Like, what do they say about golf? It's like no one can throw like a pass like a Super Bowl champion or shoot 3 points like Steph Curry. We can all hit one shot that looks similar or goes as close to the hole or in the hole like a hole
Yeah.
in one, like Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
So it's one of those sports where you can have like absolute glory or just terrible failure.
I think you nailed it there.
So yeah, so when we look at a lower handicap golfer, what specific practices or things would you have them practice as opposed to the higher handicap golfer that you just explained there?
Yeah, so it's really the same principle. I think it actually comes down to time. So, if you're a low handicap and you've only got 2 hours a week, same principle applies. Core shots you're going to need in golf and then work on a weakness. If you're a low handicap and you start to get 4 or 6 hours, I think it's then two things. You then start to say, right, what are the weaknesses I'm going to work on and spend a little bit of time on technique and skill dev in those areas. But then you start
Yeah.
to say, well, what's going to be my strength that I want to turn into a superpower? So as a golfer, it's very easy to just focus on your weaknesses and neglect your strengths. And you may find that you've got one part of your game that's good, and if that goes off the boil, your game falls apart. So for me, it's always my putting that was the only bit. That and short game I got to a level. But if I ever neglect my putting, I'm in so much trouble because it saves me. And then the bit I need to work on and takes a lot of time is my approach play. That's never been close to a standard. So that's it. I think you then just start to adapt it. Do you need to do anything else differently? You get this sort of, it takes longer to acquire those higher levels of skills. You just need to be more patient. But I think that again is just, as you say, it's working on those 1%. So it's just making sure when you're hitting balls at the range, working on technique, you're really focused on every swing. You're taking time with your practice swings in between shots. You're focused on the outcome. You have a little bit of data from a launch monitor so you can get clear feedback on face and path. And then when you're playing the skills games, are you going through the motions or are you really caring? Because learning just doesn't occur. Learning's really expensive. It's a bit like a gym adaptation. So you've really got to force the body to learn by doing repetitive, specific, challenging tasks over and over again. And if you're just going through the motions, you haven't got that level of difficulty. So it's sort of similar. I think I see a lot of low handicappers. The way they practice is like going to the gym and lifting 10K dumbbells for bicep curls, which is great for the first year. But if you're still doing that in year 5, you're not going to get any gains. So their practice actually needs to keep developing and keep challenging them. And I think that's one of the big issues with lower.
So progressive overload, the principle that you're talking about there in the gym, it can transfer over to golf as well, like with just smaller targets and less dispersion, that type of thing. But what you've just described there is deliberate practice. You've probably heard that term coined before. So obviously having a clear stretch goal, immediate informative feedback, and focused repetition. So they're the 3 things that we need. So the clear stretch goal needs to be something that's challenging for you. So when I talk to people about that, again, I'm a huge basketball fan, so I always use basketball analogies. If we were to try and throw a basketball or a piece of paper scrunched up into a bin and we stood 1 foot away from it, we'd probably get 10 out of 10. So that's not a clear stretch goal. Like that's something that's too easy for you. We need to go to somewhere that you're probably getting like 7 to 8 out of 10 perfect, and then there's 2 to 3 that are not so good and you're not getting, so that it's obviously a stretch for you to reach that thing, but there's enough positive feedback to keep you motivated to do it. Immediate informative feedback we can get if we have a clear stretch goal. Did it go to the place that we wanted it to go? Did it go as far? Did it go as wide? All that sort of thing. And then focus repetition is obviously just not doing the scrape and smack the ball at the range. It's like, going through your pre-shot routine and setting up the same every time. One of the areas that I and this is going away from practice and like to on the golf course, I think a lot of golfers will get I even feel it as well. Like when I'm putting, I have a specific routine that I go through, and if I go through that specific routine, I'll just be making putts from everywhere. But I'll line the ball up with a black line on it, the marker. I'll step back. I'll do 2 to 3 practice strokes behind the ball, watching where I want it to go, like visualizing, and then I'll walk to the ball. I'll wipe the putter face in case there's anything on there, and then I'll set up, and 4 seconds later I'm hitting the ball. I think a lot of people, when they start to play badly, or their playing partners like rushing them because they're like falling behind in rounds and things like this, they sort of go away from that. What would your advice to someone be who feels that pressure, or has that sort of coming up in their rounds? What would you say to that person? I know we've just deviated from the question we were talking about before, but it's led to this.
We should really hop back on deliberate practice research, because I think there's some interesting pieces on there as well to cover. But
yeah, we'll go back.
Yeah, really good question. So I think what you just talked about with the routine fits perfectly with something I didn't really know until I started lecturing in motor control and researching this. But golf is something we class as a perceptual motor skill, which sounds fancy, but it essentially just means we take in information through our senses and then we perform an action. But the critical point is your action is based on the information you take in. So what people do in a pre-shot routine when they do well is they take in all this information, they sift through all the noise, and they start to focus on the critical variables. And they come up with an action point, which is, okay, I need to start this ball here. It's going to have this much break and I need to hit it this hard. As soon as you get rid of that routine, you lose all of that information coming in. And therefore, guess what? Your action changes because it's based on different information. So what we see under pressure, and something that's quite common in the psych literature, is something called perceptual narrowing, which doesn't mean that your vision just kind of closes off, but it means you miss important cues that are in the environment. And as a result of that, you see people do really stupid things under pressure. So I think I was actually writing something about this earlier. A great pre-shot routine doesn't have to be 17 and a half seconds every time. It really needs to be goal-based. So I think without going too deep into this, the goals are really standing behind your shot and getting a really clear picture of what does a great golf shot look like? What's my target? What's the shot shape? Those aspects. And then you shouldn't move through the gate until you've hit those goals per se. The next thing is, okay, what does this need to feel like? So for some people, it may not be a practice swing at all. For other people, it might be 1 to 3 practice swings. And again, the next goal is, do I feel ready to execute this shot? And then the last gateway is then getting over there and executing as best as possible. And as much as there is some psych research in beginners standing in gym halls saying that external focus is best, you should think about the target. Loads of elite players keep their mind occupied with a swing cue, which is different to physically trying to change your swing. But again, it's just finding something that works. So yeah, I think for golfers that struggle to perform under pressure, I think it's first understanding the idea of a perceptual motor skill, and that's what golf is. And then secondly, having really clear goals in their pre-shot routine and being flexible in the time it takes them in certain situations, but have they hit that goal before they move on? And then the
Yeah.
last point in that is don't take 5 hours to play. That is an excuse to be really slow, but you can do that in reasonable time.
Yeah, 100%. It's like yeah, I think yeah, a lot of people get bent around the axles by it, but over the years I might have had one or two comments when I take a little longer to make a putt, but it might be like 5 or 10 seconds more. And at the end of the day, I'm probably having 5 to 10 less putts than other people, so I'm probably actually taking less time overall than them. So they can't really complain because they're taking 100 shots and I'm taking 75. We've waited longer for them.
And what have you found? Because I always think this is one of those things that can't be taught, it has to be learned. So you can take these principles, but then you go play in competitions for 10 years and you find what works for you. So have you got any tips and advice for golfers that you found over the years?
Yeah, asking me a question. Yeah, I find yeah, if you have something to focus on like that, it takes away your thoughts around other areas. For years, I struggled to break par. Like I never actually broke par as a kid, even though I played to with the old handicap system about a point 0.2 or point 0.3 handicap. Whereas with the new handicapping system, I've been down to I think around that same number. It's easier to get there though, but or well, I feel it is anyway, and probably most people say that. But I've found I've broken par a lot more as an adult, purely because I focus on these things as opposed to the outcome and the score at the end of the day. Occupying myself with, having these like little checklists and the process, which you hear people talk about all the time, that has allowed me to shoot better scores in the long run because I'm not focused on, what's happening in like 4 or 5 holes time. I'm like getting up to the ball. I measure distance to front of, like if it's an approach shot, it's like distance to front of green, distance to pin, distance to cover things like bunkers, water, whatever. So I know exactly what numbers I need to be hitting and what, if I need to hit it 140 meters to cover the water, it's like I'm not going to pull out my, 9 iron because that just gets over 140 meters. Like I'm going to be hitting an 8 iron because I don't want to hit it in the water, even if I hit a bit fat. So yeah, just having those checklists to answer that question of yours and having a process around it, it frees up a lot of things. And I think it transfers over to other areas of life as well. Like you'll hear, who was it, Albert Einstein wore the same clothes every single day, or like, these famous inventors and stuff. And they just wanted to free their mind from having to make all the other decisions that went on and just having like structured approaches to things. Same with the gym. If you walk in and there's like 100 different pieces of equipment, it's like, what the hell do I go to today? But if your trainer says you've got to do like these 8 specific exercises and you've got to do this many sets and reps of them, you walk in and you're like a horse with blinders on, right? Like you just do the job and get it done. So that's my experience anyway. Tell me about your experience. Obviously, you played to a much higher level than I have.
Don't know about that. Dabbled.
You have.
Yeah,
You've come
no.
second at the tournament. That's better than me.
Yeah, it is very personal. That idea of getting down a pre-shot routine, being goal driven, as I said, rather than like time based, was something I learned kind of through pros and then learnt the theory, I suppose, after it. Another thing which was really useful for me was realizing that you're fine to feel nervous. So for years playing in events where I had actual people turn up to watch, my heart was pounding, my arms were shaking. But you realize that as much as your golf swing feels completely different, it still looks the same, and actually you can perform really well with that. So I spoke to people who are playing in the British Open since, teeing off with their arms of jelly and they smoke it down the middle, or that they almost miss it. But I think one of the critical things is realizing that it's the acceptance of playing with anxiety is actually something that you get better at, and you don't have to fear. You can still perform really well when your arms are feeling like jelly. It just takes a little bit of
Yeah.
practice. There's some science behind that as well, but that's probably another 10-minute conversation.
Well, let's go back to deliberate practice. Sorry, I had a bit of a tongue tie there. Tell me about what you were going to bring up just before with the it was the research and whatnot behind
Yeah.
it, right?
So this is, I'm sure you know, but just in case anyone listening doesn't, this is from a guy, Anders Ericsson, who actually studied
Yeah.
violinists. So he was looking at the difference between those that were professional, elite, and world class in violin, and he studied their patterns. Since then, there's not been much research done. There's a little bit been done with ice hockey players,
Okay.
with a Canadian researcher as well. But I wrote a piece about this years ago because what people take away from the 10,000 hours is I need to do 10,000 hours to be elite. And that's completely wrong. What it actually shows you is that the only thing that separated these people were 10,000 were the hours of highly effortful, specific practice. And generally they didn't enjoy it. So I think if you take the inverse of that rule, what it tells you is you should look at your practice or your gym training and go, what are all the things that aren't moving the needle? And should I get rid of them? So actually, I look at that as how most golfers should look at it. And most people spend so much time going through the motions, dropping some balls on the putting green, going around, going to the range, hitting a few shots and not really caring where the golf ball goes. And guess what? That doesn't get you better. We know that. So yeah, that's really my take on the 10,000 hour rule is actually you should look at what you should get rid of and then try and focus on those highly effortful, specific practices that move the needle.
Yeah, I can so like a thing recently which can back this up is so when I go to do chipping and putting now, I take my 4-year-old down to North Sound Golf Club here in the Cayman Islands, a beautiful little setup for a practice area. There's two little greens and he can sort of run around and hit in the bunkers and there's an aqua range and he has lots of fun. But
Amazing.
I take 5 balls, so I've got 5 balls that are, have my black line on there. They're just all practice balls. And I'll probably hit 10 lots of those 5 balls, or maybe 15 if it's a good day and he's not, cracking the shits and running around and trying to jump in the water or something. But I'll hit like 10 lots of that, and I'm very deliberate with what I do. I'll go through a pre-shot routine, putt out every single one, but I'll try and get as many of them up and down as possible from all different places. I'll put them in different lies. I'll hit them with different clubs. Sand wedge and pitching wedge are my two favorites to practice with. So I get a bump and run. I get a bump and run up a steep slope. I get a bump and run just on a flat with a gradual uphill. So I have all these different ones and I factor them all in. So it's probably not specific enough to be like repeatable, but the fact that it's varied is the challenging part. And I'll have, out of 50, I'll score myself. The worst I've ever done is 14 out of 50. And that's because every single ball I put into the rough and bunker and plugged and fried egg lie and that type of thing. And all the putts that I made were like 6 to 8 footers. Like I didn't even hit a single ball within like 2 feet to just sort of tap in. But then the best I've done is I think it was 36 out of 50. And that was from like decent lies and like pretty easy, hitting it to 2 feet for two of the balls out of five, and then a few of them like way further than that. But that just goes to show like I literally only hit those 75 chip shots, and that's like my full practice session done. Whereas in that same 45 minutes to an hour, I can see other people at the range hit these ginormous buckets that have got like 150 balls in it. And they probably got much less from their practice sessions because they didn't get, informative feedback. There was no clear stretch goal. Like there was none of this stuff applying deliberate practice to it. Have you got any, um, other, like that's one little drill that I do. What's another little method that people could use either at the range or something else, like from
Yeah,
BreakX golf essentially, because you've
yeah,
probably got an absolute shitload of them.
yeah. We've got. I think at last count 138 schemes in there.
Different,
Yeah.
yeah. Awesome.
It-
What's a couple like
yeah.
I've just given one for chipping. What's one for putting and what's one for approach shots and driver?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we've
So,
got
so
a full game.
putting, I've got three that I love, but I'll start with. I think if you're a beginner, and actually if you're above a 15 handicap, just put down your putter so you're one putter length about 3 feet away from the hole, uphill putt, and just try and hold 20 in a row. And everyone's going to go this easy. I guarantee everyone's missing. I
Yeah.
guarantee most people are not getting past 12. The reason that's this is called 20 in a row for a 3 foot, but the reason that's so good is if you can't start the ball on line, well, there's three reasons you can miss a putt: bad start line, bad read, or bad pace. But if you can't start a ball on line, you don't get feedback on the other two. So the great thing about being so close, and as a pro, I still practice from 2 feet, 3 feet, because if I can hit the back of the hole every time, I know my start line's good. So that's a real simple one for putting. I'm going to give another one for putting because I just love putting.
Yeah, go for it.
So you think
It's
got
jam.
3, 6, 9 feet, which clues in the name. You first up level one in the app is you take one golf ball and you hold it from 3 feet. If you hold it, you go back to 2 feet. You hold that, you get back to 9 feet, and you start to get those feelings under pressure of, oh, geez, I've got to hold this now, and you get that tiny little bit of feeling that you get on the golf course. And then
Yeah.
if you do that, you then go to level two, which is with 2 balls, 3 balls, 4 balls, 5 balls. I tend to play that with 5 golf balls and can complete that. And if you can do it with 3 or above, you're a pretty good standard putter. But I think that's another great game with putting where it doesn't have to be a perfectly straight putt. You can mix those up a little bit, but that is great for pressure putting and practicing what you do. Where do you want to go next? What part of the game?
Love that. Yeah, well, I talked about chipping. I gave one little example there. Yeah, let's do approach shots and driving. Let's do
Yeah.
one each of those.
So approach is easier if you have some tech. So, if you've got no tech, is then you're focused more on like lateral error. Whereas one of the things that golfers are really bad at but don't get feedback on is how far they hit it. So that distant aspect as well. I've got a great drill for people who've got no tech and just got a basic range or practice ground. The golf pro used to work for years. He caddies for Till Hatton now, Hugo Dobson. He's unreal himself. His range challenge, Hugo's range challenge, is a game where he just gets 2 markers. His was like 10 yards apart, but most golfers start 20 yards apart. And he just starts with his lob wedge and sees if he can hit a shot that lands between those 2 markers. If he does, he moves on to his pitch and wedge, sand wedge, all the way through to his 4-iron, driver, and so on. And the score of that game is how many golf balls does it take you to complete your entire golf bag. So you've got a maximum of 40 golf balls, you've got a target of 20 yards wide, and if you miss, you've got to try again with that club until you get it through. So that's a real basic game that golfers can play.
So it's directional one. Yeah, so it's getting it in the middle of that. Yeah, so in between the goalposts. It doesn't matter whether it lands at it. It's just got to go through it on its way.
Slightly better one, if you do have some tech, or you have a range with some greens, is playing, say, like a 30-ball challenge where you look at your weakest area, whether it's 100 to 150 yards, and you give yourself 3 points if you get a ball to finish within a flagstick, which is about 8 feet, 10 feet.
Yeah.
1 point if you hit the green, and 0 points if you miss the green. And again, you get 30 golf balls, you've got 3 targets, so you get 10 at each target, and you just see, well, how many points can I score? And again, the level 2 of that, when players hit a certain standard, is you then get -1 if you miss a green. And again, that just changes the dynamic. So that's a great way, and I use that with the college team, university for years, just in the sim, because it aligns so well to strokes gain data with approach play. So if you're not getting it inside 10 feet, you're probably not going to hold a putt. If you hit the green versus miss the green, massive change in terms of what score you're going to shoot. So again, it's trying to build these games that are fun, are very specific to the golfer's needs, but then also align really well with scoring as well. That's the real challenge.
100%. And then what about one for driving? Obviously, putting the ball in play in the first place is key to being able to get it onto the green in reg and then having 2 putts. What's a good game for driving? Something to put you under pressure as well. The putting ones were really good where it was putting it under pressure.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you one which is great to play with a buddy and put a bit of money on it, put a drink on it.
Okay.
Is I'm going to take a little bit of explaining with this one, but it's worth it. This is a lot of fun. So you're in a pair of 2. You say it's the first to get to 10 points or 15 points. You've got to set that before you start. And then what you do is you take it and you pick your fairway. So if you're a higher handicapper, maybe it's sort of 30 yards wide. If you're a better handicapper, it could be 20 yards wide. And then the scoring system is you get 3 points if you hit the fairway. But before you have your drive, your opponent gets to say what side you're not allowed to miss on. So if he knows you've got a hook, he's going to say, okay, you can't miss left. And if you miss that side, it's -3. And if you miss the other side, it's -1.
Okay.
So then you take it in turns. And if you hit the fairway, you get 3 points. If you miss the wrong side, it's -3. And if you miss the better side, it's -1. And you can get in each other's heads there, but you'll bail. You start to bail on drives just the way you do on the golf course, particularly if you've got a bit of money on it. So we used to team up the university players and play that, and the range turned into a bit of a scrapping match. It got quite tasty. So that's
I bet.
it's a variation on games we've got in the app called Don't Miss Left and Don't Miss Right, which kind of looks at your data and says, okay, we'll use constraints to try and improve your practice. But that I think is really good fun.
Yeah. These are I love that game. I just need a friend. I don't have any friends. Just need to
Call me
find
up.
someone I
I'll
can play
WhatsApp
with.
you. I don't know your golf. Do you have a hook? Is it a slice? What are we working on here?
It used to be a bit of a slice, and obviously with the winds on a tropical island like I live, it makes it exponentially worse on some holes. But yeah, it's not too bad these days. I've got it under wraps. But yeah, I love those games where they like it enforces pressure and makes you like not want to do something, and it makes you think about the same as on a golf course, right? Like it's invoking that same sort of pressure that you would get out on the golf course. Like left is the water -3, right is the rough or trees -1. Obviously, the fairway is good. And these are all things that we play as kids, right? Like I
Yeah,
remember years ago, like one of my favorite games that we played as kids was we used to be members of this golf course called Pine Rivers, which is a course in like North Brisbane in Queensland in Australia. And we'd go for a walk in the dams when they dried out a bit in school holidays, and just we'd find like 500 golf balls between the three, four of us, and we used to take those balls and then we'd play essentially marbles with each other. So we'd all hit these balls into the green. And if you were getting it closer than your friends, you were winning balls off them and they were winning balls off you. You didn't
amazing.
want to lose the Pro V1s that you'd found because, there wasn't too many Pro V1s and Pro V1Xs and stuff. You didn't care about your pinnacles and your top flights and stuff and max flies in those days. So like, but that was pressure. Like you didn't want to lose the balls and you were like hitting these, golf shots into greens. And actually, it was with the old Tommy Armour 59-degree wedges, if you remember those. You had the
Yeah,
59 and the
yeah, yeah.
54 degrees. Yeah, Tommy Armour. That was
Wow,
uh,
it's
that was
taking
my
us
club of
back.
choice. Yeah, man. Yeah, and
No, that's it. I
yeah,
think
it
I think
invokes the
that
same thing.
yeah, and those games are really important. And we get a bit more boring and serious as we grow up, and we lose that. So I think it's important. I think it's important to say there is still a place for drills, technique, and working on that. The problem is golfers tend to spend 90 to 95% of their time on that and not enough on this. And I kind of
Yeah.
feel, depending on the time of year and what you're working on, it should be more like 30 drills, 70% this. It's probably a good mix if any golfers are just wondering that, listening along.
Yeah, 100%. Like I know a couple of golf pros who like every time I talk to them, they're like, oh, like next week or give it a few more weeks and like this, this change will be in and blah blah. And it's like that's all they talk about.
Never
Like every
happens.
time you play with
Never
them, yeah.
happens. Yeah.
I'm probably a little bit the other direction. I'm probably like 90%, playing and practicing these types of things, and
Yeah.
maybe 10% technique change. So, yeah, but it's people can be either end of the spectrum. We've also got to remember golf is a game that's played on a course with all the mind games and stuff that go on with all the different variables and whatnot. So, hence why, 70% is there and 30% is technique because, yeah, we need a little bit of each. Cool. Now, the what so obviously you've worked in different sports, like you mentioned before, and for different varying levels of those athletes in the different sports. What are lessons from golf that you've taken away and been able to apply to other sports, or what are some lessons from other sports that you've been able to take away and then apply to golf?
Yeah. I mean, as a player or a coach, because I think I learn a lot
Let's
coaching from other sports, but that's probably less applicable here, isn't it?
Yeah, let's go. We'll start as a coach, and then we can, evolve that into as a player as well.
Yes, I think when in my 20s, I just tried to take up a different sport every year and be a beginner again, because I didn't want to forget what that's like. And then say like when I took up tennis, I had some lessons. I was like, oh, their progression within a lesson is so good. I don't do that in golf, because they go from here's a forehand to here's a drill with a forehand to here's a game scenario. So it was one of the things I
Yeah.
really tried to pick up and take into my coaching. What have I learned from other sports is, do you know what? An elite level is just doing the boring stuff ridiculously well. And I think that goes for golf and for that. It's just chiseling away at what are the core skills and getting really, really good at them. So, I mean, I'm definitely not built like a rugby player when we met, but a lot of appreciation for rugby players. And it's just like, the discipline of actually like decision making, core skills within the game in terms of, passing, rucking, tackling. Just get really, really good at them and doing the same things over and over again. And I think that's what I see from other sports that actually apply to golf. People are always looking for some magic fix, and it's like, no, no, no. You need to get a little bit better with your strike, get that variation down a little bit more, or work on that club face control a little bit more, or again, get better with your decision making around the greens and chipping. So I think it feels like you can never get from a 20 handicap to a +2, and you can't straight away, but it's just going, can I get to 18? Can I get to 16? Can I keep chipping away? That's the common denominator, I think, working across it with a few elite athletes in different sports.
Yeah. I love that. It's 100% true. You would know probably some of the best rounds you've ever played have probably felt the easiest. purely because there's a lot less mental fatigue because you're not putting yourself into shitty positions. You're probably hitting more fairways and hitting more greens, and then you actually probably feel like you're holding less putts. That's what I've felt like when I've shot, a couple under at different places, and like I'll hit, 14 greens, and I'm like, I didn't even make any putts today. Like I had 14 chances at birdie, and I made two. I shot two under. Whereas other days, like a couple of weeks ago, I shot 71, which is even par here, and I hit eight greens. I had three birdies and three bogeys. The greens are very small, so if you miss a green, it can be, 3 feet off, and it's a very easy chip and putt. But I won't tell everyone about that, so they think I'm some sort of short game wizard. But um,
No, I think we need to focus on the point. It sounds like your average stroke average is around 70. I think you should get on tour next year.
no, 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 no. That's off the blue tees, not off the black tees. Uh,
But
the yeah, what like the rounds will feel easy, and that's because they're doing the basic things correctly. Like one of the things with golf that's very easy to do, and I see this a lot at the course here in Cayman because they have a lot of holes that are very risk reward. So you can cut off corners of dog legs for par fives, and you can turn it from a 160-yard par five into one that's like 400 yards if you go across the corner. But it's OB over the corner, and there's a high tree that you got to hit it around, like a big palm tree. Then there's other holes where it's like water the whole way down the left, and then it cuts in at the green, and it's only 290 yards long. That's a par four. But, most of the time, if you hit it anywhere left, it's going in the water. But it's doing the simple things correctly, like you're saying, having the confidence that you can just pull off the basic shot that you've practiced a lot, which is the one that you're putting in play, like you said, and also not having the mental control to not go, cool, I'm going to try and drive this green because I want to try and shoot the lower score. It's having the confidence in your ability to then hit the wedge shot onto the green and then make your putt, etc. What are the fundamentals? Yeah.
well, it ties back in really well to the start of our conversation on playing stats.
Mm,
Yeah. The difference in the amount of birdies a player makes from a 25 handicap down to scratch, I think, is about 2.1.
mm,
So the 25 shots worse off, but on average, scratch handicappers only make two birdies more around than a 25
yeah.
handicap. But scratch golfers, I think, make about eight less double bogeys or worse in a round of golf. So the whole point of getting good at golf is first double bogey avoidance. So if you're over a 20 handicap, it's just avoid double bogeys, whatever way you can, even if it's 7-iron off the tee, it's fine. And then when you're going from a teen handicap down to low single figures, it's bogey avoidance. And then actually, even when you look at this data with elite players, normally it's bogey avoidance, which is the difference in form. We see the odd round where like McIlroy suddenly has 9 birdies in a round. But actually, when you look at the general trend, it's how many bogeys can you avoid making. Hence, I think McIlroy
Mm,
came up about being more like Scotty Scheffler, just at
yeah.
the Pebble Beach that's just been. So yeah, that hopefully is a key nugget to take away for golfers and try and wrap how we're looking at practice, playing stats, and what they should do on the golf course.
Yeah, 100%. Rory actually, I didn't watch any of the Pebble Beach, but I saw one of Rory's quotes. He said this year he wants to play more bogey-free rounds of golf. That was his thing, and I think 3 of the 4 rounds at Pebble he played bogey-free.
That's unreal.
So
So good.
yeah, yeah. So that's like for me, that is a big thing. As someone who, at the moment, my handicap is like 2 or 3. So my goals are no doubles and no three putts. That's my goals each and every round. I don't care about fairways. I don't care about total putts because I might drive par four green or hit it on two on a par five and three putt for par. But it's because the proximity to hole is so far away because you're hitting it in from so far away. So it's not the end of the world. But yeah, having those couple of things, it then makes the decision making for if I drive it off the fairway, it goes behind the trees, no doubles, no three putts. Okay, cool. No doubles. Well, if I try and hit it out of this tree, it could end up in a double. If I punch it to there and then I have a 50-yard shot into the green, there's a high likelihood that I'm not going to have a double because it's a 50-yard pitch and I'm probably not going to make double from there. An interesting stat which I picked up from Scott Fawcett like a while ago was I believe it was when tour players hit it off the fairway and they're in the trees, 80% of the time they'll make bogey. 80% of the time that they're out of position on a par four and they're hitting their second shot from the trees with no clear shot to the green, they'll make a bogey.
Which
So
makes sense.
people,
But we
yeah, but
remember the
people see
Tiger
the
Woods.
20%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. The highlight reel. Yeah. No, that's really cool. So I didn't know that stat. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I'll have to actually double check that before we, go pushing this out to everyone. And actually, if someone finds that there's information to the contrary, then let me know.
It
But that was
sounds
one
about
thing that I
right.
picked up from him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you think about it, they only want to show the highlight reel on, the PGA Tour coverage and they don't want to show us, people making bogeys and whatever else. Yeah, just putting yourself in positions where you're not going to make double is, yeah, it's going to save probably the most amount of people, the most amount of shots.
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Now, I'm going to be very respectful of your time because we've already come up to close to the hour here. Obviously, with your work with Golf Insider and BreakX Golf, if people want to learn more about you, more about those platforms and dive into some of that work or even get started with BreakX, where can people go and where can people get information to follow you for more?
Yeah, sure. So no, Golf Insider, if anyone wants some, golf performance content, I've got a weekly newsletter that goes out and has some of this stuff each week with some skills games. And if they want to try out BreakX Golf, yeah, just Google BreakX Golf, it'll come up. 7-day free trial. So, we're really keen to just let people go in, put in some rounds of golf, get a practice plan. You look at all of the skills games in there as well. So yeah, those two, if they want to find out. And both of them, if they want to email me, I'm still running the emails and other aspects. So if you want to get in touch, just ping me an email or anything and I'll pick that up.
Okay, awesome, mate. Well, thanks so much for your time.
And I
Looking
thank you,
forward
Shaun.
to
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely have to get you back on for round two because out of my list of questions here, we only got about 5 or 6 in and had lots of little tangents, which were great. So yeah, thanks again for your time, and yeah, speak to you again soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Shaun.